You want to hear the opening scene from book 2?
Sure.
Hand me your book, Casey. Thanks. In here, this is how it starts, okay? You've got Basil. The title of this chapter is Not So Small Anymore. Okay? So, and you know, did you notice at the start of every chapter there's a little bit of dragon wisdom from Basil?
Well,
So in this,
from when Basil's a lot older.
right,
And
exactly.
it seems like he's actually writing the book himself.
Maybe he did. I'm not telling, but maybe he did. I always felt that way about the Merlin books. I really felt like I was just Merlin's scribe, and he was standing there saying, "Right, faster, do it! I need more humor in that spot. Make that more adventurous. I don't like that character. Give that character a big nose. Have him talk funny. Where's that girl? I haven't heard from her in a while." You know, all those kinds of things. Merlin is a really tough taskmaster. But anyway, here's how it begins. It starts out with this dragon wisdom. Having been very small, I can truthfully tell you that size doesn't matter at all. Except when it does. And it begins, the wrathful roar exploded so forcefully it toppled a grove of ironwood trees, emptied out a flowing river, and blew an entire waterfall sideways. Fierce winds slammed into the pinnacles high above the lake, breaking off towers of rock that plunged over the cliffs, hitting the water with tumultuous splashes. Not that those splashes could be heard, however. That roar filled the air, overwhelming every other sound. When at last that roar faded away, another sound remained, higher and thinner, yet every bit as arresting, a frenzied chorus of shrieks, the shrieks of children about to die. Atop those sheer cliffs huddled a band of young dwarves, like all of their kind in fire root. Curly red hair hovered over their heads like fluffy clouds, yet their typical expressions of mischief and playfulness had given way to something else. Something like terror. Now, then it goes into why they're scared and what's happening, and the fact is that there is a giant dragon facing them, and he is as big as a hillside, and his roar just makes the ground quake as well as everyone else around him. "Tell me," he demanded over and over. "Never," cried an older girl, one of the leaders of the children, still clutching her father's charred axe. She raised the heavy axe as high as she could before her arms couldn't hold it any longer. As the double-edged blade slapped down to the ground, she said, "We'll never tell you where to find the flaming jewels." "Our people discovered them," yelled a boy who was right by her side. "They belong to the dwarves, not the dragons," yelled another. Lo Valdirg's eyes glowed like molten lava. A ferocious rumble gathered in his chest, while his eyes seemed to burst into flames. "They will soon belong to me, you little insects." The scarlet dragon drew a deep breath, preparing to blast them into ashes. The shrieks rose louder, piercing the air. Many of the children shrank back, almost falling over the edge of the cliff above the lake. Only a few, including the girl with the axe, stood motionless before their foe. He roared. Out of his mouth poured an avalanche of flames, so intense that even the air seemed to flee, rushing away in a superheated wind. All this fire, smoke, and wind shot toward the young dwarves, but never reached them. At the instant the dragon's flames blasted forth, a great wing reached down from the sky and blocked the onslaught. Protected by thousands of bright green scales, the wing deflected everything right back at the attacker, smothering him with smoke and fire. Lo Valdirg roared, this time not in rage, but in surprise and pain. The sudden blast of flames had singed his eyes and burned away his whole beard. He rolled backward, away from the cliff, clawing at his wounded eyes. At the same time, the creature whose wing had saved the children landed between them and the attacking dragon. Smashing down with a resounding crash, his weight shook the ground so violently that hundreds of boulders broke off and rained down into the lake. Who do you think it was?
Basil.
Exactly. So the great green dragon said, "Do not fear me." His voice is loud as thunder, yet somehow not so frightening. "I am Basil Garad." Basil Garad? The one who saved Merlin from an evil Creelix? The titanic head nodded slowly. Then one child asked, "Why did you help us?" Turning away from the other dragon, Basil Garad lowered his head a bit more. As his luminous shadow covered the girl, many of the other dwarves backed away nervously, but she stood motionless, staring at him. She wanted to know the answer to her question. Finally, he spoke. His voice surprisingly gentle. "Because, little one, I was once very small, even smaller than you." That's how the story begins. I hope you'll have a lot of fun.